Students will integrate learning across courses and disciplines and between campus and community life. And you can look at the IL1, apply knowledge, skills, or responsibilities gained in one academic or experiential context to other contexts. More than 25% of our students at Eau Claire study abroad. So you guys are in a pretty large group of students who do so. We want to give students the opportunity, if they so desire, to acquire this requirement, this integrative learning experience, just by studying abroad. It's not tied to a class. You might be going on a abroad trip where there are classes you're taking, but some abroad trips are more experiential. They're not tied to a particular course. So we're going to allow students to get the graduation requirement by studying abroad, but they'll have to do a little bit of work, and that's what you guys are doing, and we'll be reading your work and then seeing if you're meeting our expectations. So if you turn that page over, you can see that we have a rubric to assess integrative learning, apply knowledge, skills, or responsibilities gained in one academic or experiential context to another context. So we hope that there are three elements. The student can demonstrate a developing sense of self as a learner by connecting academic knowledge to their experiences when they're abroad. And I'll go through and give you an example of one. Students in B can make connections across disciplines. A discipline might be physics, English, women's studies, German, whatever the area that you're studying. And finally, the student applies the skills and the knowledge or methodologies that they learned in those academic experiences, context, to a different experience. In this case, your experience being abroad. Make sense so far? And we hope that the majority of students will meet our expectations and potentially exceed. It's a little bit more challenging because we have sophomores who are studying abroad, and we don't expect that they might have taken 300-level courses yet. Many do, but not all do. And so it might be a little bit more difficult for them to be applying knowledge and skills that they've studied here to their study abroad, but that's what we want to see. So we have a D2L site for the integrated learning while you're abroad. And if you go to the site and click on content, you can see that we've got the different links of programs. Summer, winterim, semester, and semester of 10 weeks, either fall or spring. I'm just going to use this summer 8 to 9 week as the one we'll look at, but they're all the same. It's just that the questions that you're going to be required to talk about are spread out at different intervals of time, obviously depending on the length of your experience abroad. But ideally, the student who's going to be studying abroad and who applies to get their IL, Integrative Learning Experience requirement for studying abroad, will have done two things. They'll have talked to his or her advisor and said, you know what, I'm interested in digging in a little bit deeper into this topic. Maybe it's women in the labor force in Costa Rica or Ecuador. You're going to Ecuador, right? Yeah. And then your advisor can say, well, what are some of the classes that you've taken? What are some of the courses that you've taken now or experiences you've had here that you can draw upon the knowledge and the skills from those classes to help you better understand the women's status in the labor market in Costa Rica? Well, perhaps you took an introduction to feminist theory, in which you're introduced to various ways that you can look at issues that women face here in the States and around the world. And maybe you've taken an Econ 337, Women in the Labor Market class. And then you're a Spanish student because you're going to Costa Rica, and maybe you've already taken the Spanish-American Civ, which introduced you to a little about the history and the culture of Latin America. And with those three courses as a background, you can then take that information, some of these ideas you learned and started to think about, and use them as the filter through which you kind of understand a woman's role in Costa Rica when she's got her own shop. Or maybe women aren't as involved in the labor market and you want to understand why. What are some of the issues that are keeping them from being more involved in the labor market? Does that make sense? So you need to think about, from your own perspective, your study abroad. Is there some issue that you're really interested in? Could it be the European community? If you're going to Germany or if you're going to Greece, boy, Greece went through some really tough economic crises times several years ago, and they're still not out of it. What's their relationship with the European community? How are they trying to deal with these things? Maybe a poli-sci class that you took. You can draw upon information from there. But it's important for you to think about this prior. So on the D2L site, we've come up with a pretty simple worksheet just to get you going at it. I want to take a look at these so that you're familiar with them before. And this is just a brainstorming sheet before you study abroad. So what is one course or discipline in which you can apply some of the knowledge that you learned to the theme that you want to talk about. So if I'm going to talk about women in the labor market, I'm going to write down here, like Women's Studies 200, just a couple of ideas to get me thinking about how could I apply that knowledge to the topic I've chosen. Here's my second discipline, because we want you to be combining disciplines. It can't be all just from German. German and something else. And ideally, it is coming from your major. One of those disciplines can certainly be your major because you know more about that, obviously, than in other courses. What are the connections then between this course and my topic? Come up with a couple of connections. This is all just to get you thinking. And you could actually do this before you met with your advisor. And then this will be completed when you're abroad according to the steps. And I'll show you those steps in just a bit. Here's an example of one student and what she did. She was TEFL, teaching English as a foreign language minor. And so she used an education studies course, Intro to Inclusive Early Childhood Education. She used a Psych 260, educational psychology, wrote down some of the ideas, knowledge, theories that she was going to incorporate when she was studying, teaching non-native speaking children English. So here are the strategies or some of the theories that she was going to draw upon. This is how they connected to her teaching non-native speaking children English. And then while she was abroad, that's what she studied. She studied what are some strategies, how do you best teach TEFL to students who don't speak English when you're abroad. That's one example that's there for you. But we want to see that you're more than just a tourist. We don't want you to just go down and consume the culture. We want you to be part of the culture and understand how their social values can be affecting you and vice versa. Now, we just don't go down there and not leave a footprint when you travel someplace. You leave a footprint and you demonstrate certain values by the way you act. And they see that and you see how they act, and we hope that you learn from it. And it may not change any of your values, it might just strengthen more your values, but it gets you to think about you and your place in the greater world outside of Wisconsin. And then at the end, you've uploaded all of the particular entries that we want. A group of professors like myself will go down and read them. We'll go down, I mean, go over, do down from here, go to a different building. We'll go read them and we'll grade them according to these rubrics to see, are they really understanding what we'd like them to be understanding? Are they getting this integrated experience from their time abroad? And we might see, no, they're really not. Well, maybe our prompts aren't so good because we've written prompts for you to write and respond to. Or maybe there's just not enough time. 3 to 4 weeks, that program isn't long enough for them to really incorporate and get to know this. So maybe we won't allow an IL for a real short program. Maybe it's got to be a full summer or a semester, but that's up to us. You don't get graded, and the students don't get graded, frankly, either. They either do it or they don't do it. If they do it, they will receive the liberal education integrated learning, but it's up to us as the university then to decide how can we improve their study abroad experience so that they really are understanding that this is not just tourism, it's an integrated experience where they can learn a lot about themselves and about the other country. Does that make sense? So have you thought of a particular theme that you'd like to investigate a little bit deeper while you're abroad? If so, great. If not, think about some of the classes that you've taken so far while you're here, and think of something that is of interest to you, because obviously you want to research something that you're interested in, not something that, I don't know, I guess I'll just do this. But it needs to be concrete enough, because if you just say, well, I want to study women in Costa Rica, well, okay, there are many aspects to a woman's life in a country like Costa Rica. What is it you want to study? Do you want to study family structure, women in the market, in education, in politics? Any questions? And there are going to be a few examples like that where it will be yes, you'll have to do it when you come back. Not ideal because you won't be able to be in the moment, so the memory might not be quite as fresh, but that's what it will happen. And there are a few programs where it is difficult to have that. Yep. But that's a good question, and the answer is yes when you come back. Really good question, and yes, the answer is yes, you can. And as a matter of fact, we can turn it around too. You can also talk about what you've learned and what you're experiencing abroad, how that might have also influenced and changed a little bit of what you learned in a particular class, or enhanced. Now you can really see live what I was talking about in abstract. So yes, you can. But we want you to at least have 2 different disciplines that you're looking at and studying a problem with. And it doesn't have to do with your major. But you can draw upon, of course, any course that you've taken in different areas and analyze a particular issue. Okay? Well, if there are no more questions, thank you very much for coming. And I hope you have great trips. And thank you for being